All right, now that we've had a chance to create a program called Friendly Greeting that allows us to greet our user based upon a first name and a last name, I would create an executable file. I would give it to my friends and neighbors, and I would say, look at the program that I wrote. The only problem with it is that it's only really going to be a personalized greeting when I give it to my friend James Dean. So what would be really helpful is if I had a way that I could make it more personalized, because right now it's not very flexible. And so what we're going to learn next is how to read input from the user, because if I could get the user's first and last name, then it is going to be much more flexible. So we're going to start a new program. We're going to call this one Friendly Hello version 2. With my opening and my closing braces, and then inside of here we will put with my opening and closing braces for the main container. Then as always, I'm going to pull these two together, and then I'm going to push them down to get them out of my way. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to personalize the greeting that we are giving to our user by asking user for first and last name, displaying a greeting. All right, so if there was some pseudocode that I was going to write, I'm going to declare and initialize some variables. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user for their first name. If I ask somebody a question, I should always pause and wait for an answer, unless it's a rhetorical question. And as a parent, there are just certain questions you should never ask your children, such as, what, you think I'm a moron? You should never say things like that to your children because there's a good chance that they're going to answer you. So, when I ask questions, I'm probably going to wait for an answer. I need to capture the response. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask the user for last name. And of course, if I ask a question, I need to wait for or capture the response. And then once we've done that, we are going to display the greeting. All right, so this is the basic format that I want my program to run. I can compile it, which will force me to save it for the first time. I can tell it where I want to put it. All right, compile it for the first time, make sure I haven't spelled anything wrong or that I'm not missing anything. And then we will add some detail. The first detail that I like to add is, what do I want my greeting to say? Well, I want it to say, hello, James Dean. The same format that we had for my friendly hello the first time. All right, so based upon what I am displaying to the user, any kind of calculations that I'm doing, what kind of variables do you think I'm probably going to need? Right. We're going to need first name and we're going to need last name. And there's one additional variable that I'm going to need. If I'm going to be reading something from the keyboard, the user's going to be typing in an answer to my question, and I need to capture it from the keyboard, there is one additional variable that I am going to need. There's one more piece of code that I need to read something from the screen, and it's called a scanner. Now, a scanner is some code that ordinary people thinking up brilliant stuff said to themselves, we should probably have a standard way of reading information from the keyboard. So they wrote some code. Now, the one thing that I would say that there are a lot of things that are included as a natural part of my Java program when I create it. System.out.print, system.out.println, these things all come standard. But there are thousands of additional things that ordinary people doing brilliant things have written that are not attached to my code, but I can have access to. All I have to do is include them in my code. So I'm going to go to the very top of the program outside the class container, and I am going to import the scanner because the scanner is not included as standard with my program. If I want to use it, I have to tell my program that I want to use it. And so I am going to use the keyword import java.util.scanner. Now, you may believe that all S's in Java are capitalized. They are not. It's just a coincidence, I promise. But the S in scanner is capitalized. So now that I have imported the scanner, my program will know what it is, and then I'm going to create one. So let's come back down here where I was declaring my variables. What data type should I make first and last name? I'll make them string. If you don't mind, I'm going to shorten that variable name, and I'm going to initialize it to the default value for a string. We'll come back and we'll create the last name. We will default it also to the default value for a string, which is dual quotes. And then I'm going to create a scanner variable. The data type of a scanner variable is a scanner. I need to give it a name. I have a tendency to call my scanners response. Your book may call it input. Different books call them different names. I have a tendency to call mine response because if you'll notice down here, I'm trying to capture a response. And when I set it equal to a default value, it's going to look a little bit different. So I'm going to say scanner response equals new scanner, and inside of the parentheses, I'm going to put system.in. Once again, the S's are capitalized, but it is just a coincidence. All right, so now I need to ask the user for the first name. Well, I know how to print something to the screen. So I'm going to do a system.out.print, and inside of here, I'm going to politely ask the user to enter your first name. And then I'm going to capture their response. I am pretty sure that I created a variable that I wanted to put that answer in, and I'm sure that variable was called fname, short for first name. So I'm going to set it equal to, I have to use my scanner to read in from the keyboard, and my scanner's name is response, and I'm going to say response.next. What this is going to do is going to read in a word, just a single word of text, a word. I'm asking for their first name, one word, and I expect them to key in one word. All right, so if you don't mind, I am going to copy this print statement to my clipboard so I can put it in here, and then I'm going to say last name, enter your last name. And then I'm going to capture that response. I'm pretty sure that I created a variable called last name to put it in, and we're going to use my scanner, which is called response. I'm going to say response.next because last name is a single word as well. So now let me compile it, see if I've spelled anything wrong, done anything wrong. And if it compiles good, I'm going to create the display the greeting. And so I'm pretty sure that I still have this on my clipboard. So now I'm going to come back. I need a text field that says, if I were to build this print statement, I need hello space. I'm going to concatenate that with, I'm pretty sure James Dean. James must be the first name. So I'm going to concatenate that text field with my variable called first name. Then if I want a space between my first and last name, I have to force it by concatenating a text field that contains just a space. And then I'm going to concatenate that with the final variable right here, Dean. All right, make sure I haven't deleted my two closing braces. This is the bulk of my program. I have asked for their first name, asked for their last name, and then used those input values that I captured using my response scanner. I have displayed the output. So now when I press the run button, I should have a general idea of what my program is going to do. What I expect it to do is print this statement to the screen, and then this line of code is going to be waiting for an answer. So I would expect the program to just pause and wait. So let's see what happens. There it is. Enter your first name. And if you'll notice, it is just waiting for me to key something in. And then as soon as I press the enter key, it continues on with the program, which is printing something else to the screen, and now it's waiting for another answer. Oh, I was going to put James Dean, wasn't I? So as soon as I press enter here, I expect it to display my greeting. Hello, Allison Dean. It's very beautiful. All right, so now we're finding out that we can actually make our programs much more flexible if we ask the user for input. So I'm pretty sure that I had a bonus calculator. The bonus calculator was a beautiful program, but not very flexible. Because if I compile it and give it to my friends for use, it's only going to calculate a 20% bonus on a $125,000 a year salary. So as much as I love my friends, I'm not sure any of them make that much. So what I need to do is I need to create a more flexible version, or a new, more flexible program. So we're going to come back to this friendly version, or friendly hello version 2. We're going to create another program. And so I'm going to do File New. I'm going to create another program, and this time I'm going to call Rectangle Area. So I'm going to create a program that will calculate the area of a rectangle based upon the input that I'm getting from the user. So once again, we need a public class. I'm going to call it Rectangle Area. And then we need our main. With my opening and closing braces. All right, so I'll pull these two together and push them down to get them out of my way a little bit. I can save the program right now just by pressing the compile button. The first time through, remember, it'll force me to save the program. I'll put it where I want. I'll call it Rectangle Area. And then as soon as it compiles and life is good, now I can come back and add some pseudocode or a plan of attack. So we're going to calculate the area of a rectangle with width and length, input by user. All right, this is what our program is going to be doing. So I'm probably going to want to declare and init some variables. I'm adding some pseudocode, mapping out a plan. The next thing I want to do is if we are going to ask the user for the length. Do you mind if I just shorten that to say prompt for length? If I'm going to ask the user a question, I should always capture the response. And then the next thing that we need to do is ask the user for width. So I'm going to use the phrase prompt for width. And then if I ask the user a question, I should capture response. All right, you may ask yourself, why do you keep saying capture response? It should be obvious that if I'm going to ask the user to enter a length, then I need to capture the response. But you would be surprised how many times you have a program that's up and running and it's not giving you the right answer and you can't figure out why it's not giving you the right answer. And it's because you asked them the question, but you never captured the response. So your calculations are a little bit off. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is calculate area. And then finally, we are going to display results. Okay, so now that I have the basic format of my program, let me compile it, see if I've spelled anything wrong, if I've deleted any semicolon or deleted any closing braces. Life seems to be good. Let's come back and add a little more detail. I want it to say something like area of rectangle 12 inches. That's what I want it to say, 12 inches. All right, so based upon, let's look at the calculations. If I were to figure out the calculations, I would break out my Google, and I would find out how to calculate the area of a rectangle, and I would find out that the area is equal to the length multiplied by the width. So based upon the things that I want to display, the calculations that I want to do, the things that I need to capture from the user, these are three areas that I can go to try to find out what kind of variables I'm probably going to need. And so one of them that I'm going to need is a first name. Another one, wrong program. Sorry, wrong program. First one that I'm going to need is length. The next one I'm going to need is width. I'm probably also going to need the area, because if I'm going to have to display it to the user, I'm probably going to need that variable. And the last one is going to be the variable that I need to read things in from the keyboard. That's right, a scanner. All right, so if I'm going to declare or create a scanner, I'm going to have to import it into my program. So I'm going to go to the very top of my program, and then I am going to import the scanner. Otherwise, my program won't know what it is. So I'm going to use the keyword import java.util.capital scanner with a semicolon. As I mentioned before, not all S's are capitalized. It just seems that way. All right, so let's come down here and let's create some variables. I'm going to make these integers, whole numbers. And in Java, one of the 4 whole number data types is int, int. We'll call it length, and I'm going to set it equal to the default value of a whole number, which would be a 0. We'll do the same thing with the width, and then the area. And then finally, I need my scanner. Its data type is scanner. I'm going to give it a name of response, and I'm going to set it equal to something slightly different. System.in is going to be inside of the parentheses. All right, let me compile it, see if I've made any mistakes so far, and then I'm going to show you what happens if I try to create a scanner without importing it. So I have my scanner creation, my declaration for my scanner variable here. I'm going to come here and just comment out that import statement just so I can see what that error message would look like if I forget to import it. And it says error, cannot find symbol. And then if I drag this up a little bit, I can see the symbol that it cannot find is the scanner. It has the caret pointing at the scanner above it. It doesn't know what a scanner is until I have imported it. So that's what your error message will look like if you forget to import your scanner. So let me uncomment that line of code and recompile just to make sure everything's right. All right, so I'm going to prompt for the length. We're going to do system.out.print. It's an executable line of code. So I'm going to ask the user, enter the length of the rectangle in inches. If I'm going to display the answer in inches, I want to be as descriptive as possible when I'm asking the user questions. So then we're going to capture the response. If I'm asking for the length, I'm going to put the answer in the variable that I created called length. I'm going to use the scanner that I created in order to read it in from the keyboard, but this time, if .next reads in a single word, I need something that will read in an integer variable, and it's capital INT. So next INT is going to read in a whole number variable or value from the keyboard, and it's going to place that value in an int variable. Length is defined as an int variable. Next int will read an integer into that variable. All right, so if you don't mind, I'm going to copy this print statement because now we're going to print the width. Or now we're going to ask the user for the width. One thing that I'm going to do is I am doing a system.out.print when I'm asking for the length. When I ask for the width, I'm going to do a print line. And I want to show you the difference between a print statement and a print line when you're capturing information from the user. All right, so I changed that text field to say enter the width of the rectangle in inches. Now I'm going to store my answer in the variable that I created for that. I'm going to use my scanner. And this time I'm going to do not .next int because I'm trying to read in an integer value. Then I'm going to calculate the area. I know I have a variable that I created to store that answer is. And then I'm just going to multiply length times width. It is an executable line of code, so there's a semicolon. And then finally, I'm going to display the results. I'm pretty sure I have that print statement still on my clipboard. So now I'm just going to say, inside of here, what I'm attempting to say is area of rectangle, colon, space. Control C. That, when I'm building my print statement, is going to be my text. I know that 12 is actually a variable. So building my print statement, I'm going to concatenate that with the variable. That should be the area. And then I'm going to concatenate that with one final text field because I wanted this space inches. at the end of my print statement, and so I'm going to concatenate that final text field into my print statement, and then we're going to compile it to make sure I haven't spelled anything wrong, to implement any of my changes, and then I'm going to run it. It's a good idea to know what your program is going to do the first time you run it. So it's going to prompt me for the length, but it's going to do a system.out.print. So let's see what that looks like. Enter the length of the rectangle in inches. What I'd like you to do is notice that my cursor is sitting here at the end of the question. And because I put a space at the end of the question before the closing quote, there is a space between my question and the cursor. So I'm going to key in a value that I can do on the fly. What I want you to notice is when it displays this second prompt, notice where my cursor is. See how my cursor is on the next line? That's because my second prompt was a system.out.print line. Now, it is your choice, whichever you prefer. If you prefer to have your cursor blinking at the end of your question, or if you prefer to have your cursor blinking on the new line after your question, it is certainly up to you. I would encourage you to try it both ways, see what you feel more comfortable with, but ultimately I want you to be consistent. You're going to find that I have a tendency to use print statements when I'm prompting the user because I like my cursor blinking at the end of the question. Unless it's a really long question, it kind of holds their attention at the end of that question. And so I'm going to be using print statements whenever I prompt users. You can use either one of them. Just be consistent once you've decided on what you like. All right, so I'm going to key in a value that I can calculate on the fly. I'm pretty sure that 10 times 5 is 50, so my answer should probably be area of rectangle, colon, space, 50, space, inches. All right, so my program should be much more flexible now because I'm able to get input from the user. All right, we're going to stop here for now. And when we come back to the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to read in a number of different data types. If you remember, we said that in Java there are whole number data types, 4 of them. There are floating point data types. We learned about 2 of them. We also learned about character data types and Boolean and string data types. So the next lecture is going to include some code to be able to read in each one of those different data types.